not just a leadership, but leadership with character. So today we're going to have a twofold conversation with you. On one hand, we're going to discuss with you what leadership is, and that'll be the first part of our presentation. And then, after we will have established with you the basis for our discussion on leadership, we'll move into character and talk about character in leadership. So with this, I would like to again welcome Dr. Boyd Johnson, and he will continue this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you all. As was said in the slide, I'm Dr. Boyd Johnson. I am a full professor at University of the United States, and I teach in leadership studies. We have a doctoral program, a PhD in organizational leadership, and we also have a master's degree in organizational leadership, and I teach in both those. And I was chair of the department also for 6 years, and now I'm back to being faculty, which I love teaching. And I'm here in Europe right now to do research on cultural issues in several countries. I just came from Romania and Serbia. I just flew in yesterday from Serbia. We were in Belgrade studying cultural issues as it relates to leadership and what is called cultural intelligence, the ability to understand other cultures and to work with people from other cultures. Because that's our future, isn't it? Whether we like it or not, we're going to be dealing with people from other countries, other societies, other languages. And so it's a real pleasure to be here in Ukraine. I've been coming here to Ukraine for over 10 years. We used to bring doctoral students here to visit for a whole week, and Dr. Crane was involved in that, telling them about the medical system here in Ukraine, and also they got to visit all over the country. And we had students tell us that that was the highlight of their doctoral program, was coming to Ukraine. So they really enjoyed their time here. They loved Ukrainian food, Ukrainian people, and all the sites here. And we had a wonderful time talking about cultural differences between the United States and Ukraine, which I'd love to spend an hour talking about, but we're not. We're going to talk about leaders, character, and public administration. A little of my background, and focus my research, as I said, on Eastern Europe right now, but before that I did my doctoral research for my PhD in Africa. I did my doctoral degree in England, but I focused on Tanzania in East Africa, and before that I lived in Asia for 8 years. Lived in Australia, in Thailand, Singapore, and Pakistan. So, and I traveled quite a lot with a nonprofit organization, and I spent time now in over 70 countries. So I've seen a bit of the world on all the continents, except for Antarctica, which I'm planning to visit with my wife next year. So then I can say I've been to all the continents. But I've been to all the inhabited continents here on the earth. And one of the things that I've seen in all of the cultures that I've visited, two things. One is that cultures differ, but human beings are very similar. Have you seen that too? Yes. And the second thing I've seen is that everybody is concerned about leadership. And why is that? Because poor leadership can ruin an organization, and it can ruin a country. And we're not going to talk about the history of Eastern Europe, the history of Ukraine, don't worry. We could spend another hour on that, but we won't. But we have some really interesting examples that I hope my colleague, Dr. Artyom, would bring up about the situation here in Ukraine. But we're going to talk more generally, as he said. So let's start off with, what is leadership? What is it about the human condition that makes leadership possible? Why is this an important question for us to ask, do you think?
Because in the future we want always to be leaders.
Ah, thank you. Anybody else? Why would we even ask this question? What is leadership? Everybody knows what leadership is, right? There's a boss, and there's people who have to listen to the boss. That's leadership, right? I'm being sarcastic. It's not. A lot of people think that's leadership, but leadership is much more, as we're going to talk about today.
Much deeper meaning.
Much deeper meaning, thank you, yes. And we're going to talk about some of the dimensions of leadership. We're going to ask, what is it? Let's start at the basics. Let's start at the foundation. What is it about us as human beings? Remember I said, everywhere I've gone, I've seen some commonalities of us as human beings. We share not only a biology that's the same, so a doctor who operates on a patient in Kiev is going to basically see the same body that he would see of a patient in New York City, right? We don't have different insides, but we're different up here, aren't we? We're different in our cultures and in our psychology. So we need to ask ourselves, what is it about leadership that we need to understand? What is it about the human condition? And what are the universals that we can see about leadership? And what are the universals about our human nature? In the United States, leadership is becoming a discipline, actually, its own academic field. We're sort of pioneers in that, actually. Before, leadership was part of political science department, or part of the psychology department, or public administration department. But now, it's becoming a discipline, an academic field in its own right. And the research that we're doing and the teaching and the doctorate that we have now is multiplying throughout the country, and even over here in Europe as well. So, as we look at leadership, there are many, many answers to what leadership is and what leadership isn't. So let's take a look. It's based on the human condition, as we said, and it's the basis for an understanding of the nature of leadership. There were many, many people who have come together and tried to do a definition of leadership. They were unsuccessful. They couldn't figure out one definition of leadership. But this is the closest that they could come. And this is, I'm going to actually do something I don't normally like to do. I'm going to read the slide. Okay, sorry. But we really need to look at this and, as we say in America, unpack it. Like a suitcase, we're going to open it up and look inside. What is there? Well, leadership is part of the human condition. Right? Let's stop right there. We're going to take it piece by piece. Because we have to have leaders, don't we? Can everybody just come in a university and do what they want? No, you have to have somebody who understands the different departments and the curriculum and hiring professors, hiring staff, right? There needs to be leadership, but the leadership must have a clear vision. We're going to talk about that a fair amount today. It's part of the human condition that we need leaders, right? And as such, it's about the wants, needs, power, conflict, because we do have conflict, don't we? Change, we have to deal with change constantly. Group dynamics, that's the psychology of groups that social psychologists are interested in. Cooperation, leader-follower relationships, we're going to talk about that as well. What is a follower? We're all followers, but we're also, at the same time, you can be a leader. Ethics, what is the right thing to do? And the meaning that is given to leadership. And we're going to talk about culture as well. So you may say, well, that's everything. So, so what is leadership not about? It's about everything, and it's about all aspects of our lives. So the basis for the nature of leadership, you can see it covers everything, doesn't it? Because it operates on an individual level. That is, the leader, him or herself, dealing with one person, but also deals with group dynamics, also deals with organizational dynamics, and then deals with cultural dynamics. So we teach, in our program, we teach at all those levels. We talk about the psychology of leadership, we talk about group dynamics, organizational behavior, and then also about culture. Both social culture, that's what anthropologists are interested in. I'm an anthropologist. My undergraduate degrees and my master's degree was in anthropology, the study of culture. And I think you can't understand leadership without understanding the culture in which is it embedded. Because what is good leadership in one culture may not be good leadership in another. But these are the interesting dynamics and components of leadership that we need to understand. So building on that, we have to go back, remember, to the foundation. What is it about us that makes leadership possible, or makes for good leadership or bad leadership? Well, part of it is an understanding and an acknowledgement that we are, by our nature, double creatures. Okay? There's a tension because we're social animals but we also are individuals who only think about ourselves. I know that's not true here in Ukraine, but in America, people think a lot about themselves. And so we need to be self-reflective, because people are not equal, but they do function well in groups, don't they? Or they can, if they have good leadership. But there's two aspects to the human character. One is that, as I said, that we're social beings, but we're also individuals who have our own needs and desires. And on the one hand, people are logical, right? They're rational, they're goal-oriented, they're analytical, right? That's all good. But at the same time, human beings are also emotional, non-logical, guided by their passions, guided by their intuition, and things like that. And so a leader has to be aware of that and work with both sides of the human condition. Understand the people that work for them as leaders, but also understand themselves. And if a leader doesn't understand him or herself, they're in big trouble, I think. So the issue here is that we have to understand who we are as individuals. And we always say in our program that you lead from who you are. You lead from who you are. And if you don't understand yourself and your own psychology, then it's very hard for you to understand other people and their psychology. And it becomes even more complicated when you're in a group because you have a mixture of people with different personalities, different psychologies, right? And so what's very important is that we understand that there's both sides here. We have to deal with the individual and the group. We have to deal with the logical and the illogical. We have to deal with the good and the bad, as we say. And a leader must be able to do that in an effective way. At the same time, leaders are operating within a culture. And there's two different kinds of culture, and we teach both in our program. There's the organizational culture. So whether you're in a business or whether you're in a government office or whether you're in a nonprofit or whether you're in healthcare and hospital, you're operating in the context of a group. And there's group dynamics, and we teach organizational behavior, organizational learning, organizational change. All those are at the group level. But there's also social culture. That's the norms and beliefs, things that we take for granted. So Ukrainian culture, which I'm fascinated by, is very different from American culture, or very different from Serbian culture, where I just was. Or before that, a few days before that, I was in Romania, in Bucharest. Oh my, that's an interesting culture. Completely different from the Slavic culture, you know. It's, anyway, we won't get into history, sorry. This is a fascinating part of the world, by the way. I don't know if you realize how fascinating it is to an outsider. So, what are some examples that you can think of organizational behavior? What does that mean? Anybody, you must study that in your program, I would imagine. What is organizational behavior? Is it just the combination of individuals working together, or is it something different? Anybody have a thought on that? Two words, organizational behavior. Does an organization behave?
Maybe when we have some strict rules and we need to be the part of some organization, we need to understand this organization and need to be the part of the organization. It's okay?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, organizational beings, organizations have character too, just like individuals do, don't they? They have almost an organizational psychology is a whole other area. Organizations can be very effective or they can be very ineffective. One of the things that makes them effective or ineffective, guess where I'm going, is leadership. Even if you have good people, well-educated people, motivated people, if they have poor leadership, everything starts to not work well together. I've worked in organizations that are very ineffective, and I can tell you it's a very terrible experience. I've also been privileged to work for really good leaders, where everybody understands what the vision is, everyone understands what the goal is, everybody understands what their role is, and everybody understands clearly what they are not to do. So everything is very, very clear. So all we can say at this point is that leadership originates in this differences in humanity that we just talked about, in the human character that we just mentioned a moment ago. And it takes into consideration the humanity of people, that people are not just pieces of a machine, but they're human. It sounds rather obvious, but a lot of leaders don't understand that. So let's go on to just do a little philosophy here. Sorry, just for a second. If we look at Aristotle, everybody heard of Aristotle?
Sure.
Most people have heard of him, but most people have never read him. But Aristotle did say that man, this is thousands of years ago, he understood that man, by man, sorry ladies, it means you too. That's, in English. Do you have something like that in Russian, Ukrainian as well? Would you say man, like mankind?
We're more politically correct.
So you're more politically correct. It includes both men and women? Good. Humankind is a term that we use now, but this, this was his quote, so, and he's dead, so we can't, argue with him. But humankind is by nature, no, that doesn't work. Man, okay, meaning men and women, are by our nature social animals. Do you think that's true? Yes? Why is that? Why do you think we're that way?
Because we need to eat, because we have some
Needs.
some our needs, and like animals.
Like animals, like wolves, they hunt in packs, right? Maybe that's not a good example. Well, yes, that's true. We do have needs, and those needs are best met by working in groups. And if a group works well together, functions well together, they can achieve more than the individuals can by themselves. And a leader knows that. And so, at the same time, leadership is a bit of a mystery because it brings together the best of individuals, but unfortunately it can also, as I said, it can also bring out the worst in people. And that's why in our program we study different kinds of leadership. And one of the kinds of leadership is autocratic leadership. Does anybody know what that is? Autocratic leadership? It's like a pyramid. I'm at the top, you're at the bottom, you do what I say. Sound familiar? That's unfortunately very common, isn't it, in organizations of all kinds, government, non-government, healthcare, higher education even. You'd think that in universities people wouldn't do that, but they do. I work in a university, I can tell you, they do. So it brings out the best and the worst in people. But leaders who are really effective are those who bring out in their followers, that means the people that work for them, draws out the best in them. And that can be done. And it's a skill that can be learned. Leadership can be learned. There's a big debate that we start off our program with. Is it innate? That means, is leadership, are you born with it as a leader? Or are you developed as a leader? Is it something you can learn, like a skill?
Maybe if you're born
some people
with
have
it, you
charisma.
can develop it.
Okay. Are there born leaders?
No.
What do you think? Some
people
say yes, some say no.
they have
Have you ever watched children in a playground?
Yes, of course.
Do some children sort of lead the other children?
Yes.
Yeah, some bossy little children boss around others. You know that word, bossy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry?
Actually, the child is copying the model of adults. And for example, if he could observe this model in his family,
Yeah.
he copied on his behavior.
That's right.
And he used to just to make this acting like, for example, his father, and he could simply see, oh, they are following me, and they could, but it could be also individually, which is would be developed well, and all depends on mostly environment. And from other hand, like Mom mentioned, charisma.
Charisma.
Yes, it's actually which is more natural as a feature than something like from your character, because one person could be just enter in the room and he's like spark, and from his starting from his smile on his face, everybody like energetic around him, and this is coming. He like attract attention, and this build the all like a picture, make it picture. So it's different issues.
Thank you. Well, there's a big debate on this, at least in the United States. Are there born leaders and they're automatically leaders, and other people are not, or can it be developed in some way? And there's some evidence that shows that there's a bit of both. That some people are inherently leaders, but sometimes they're not good leaders. Remember, back to the idea of ineffective, that they just feel that leadership is autocratic, telling people what to do, and having them follow you and do exactly what you say, and not listening to them. Which, by the way, I think is a very bad way to lead, because often people in the organization have a lot of information and a lot of intelligence that you should listen to. On the other hand, there's the idea that leadership can be taught and learned and developed. And I personally, I'm just going to tell you right out, I'm a personal believer in that, because I've seen people that you didn't think maybe were leaders suddenly come alive and become leaders when leadership is given to them, and they become very good leaders, actually. And so leadership is something that is probably a combination. And again, there's an ongoing debate, at least in the literature, the writing, the scholarly writing in the United States and here in Europe as well about that. So it draws on who we are, it draws on what we can be, and it also draws on those two sides of the character. Remember we talked about just a moment ago, there's the rational, logical side of us, and there's the emotional and the intuitive and all this, that side. And a leader needs to deal with both and understand people and work with them. So we need to reflect, we need to reason, but we also need to understand that people have emotions, people have feelings, people have ideas that they want to share. And although we're selfish in our human nature, we can work together. Do you believe that? And leaders bring people together in a way to achieve a common purpose and do something greater than what they could do as individuals. That's good leadership. Unfortunately, it's rather rare, at least from what I've seen around the world. And we can't get away from the fact that I was mentioning earlier, that you have to understand how culture impacts leadership. Because I lived in Asia, for example, many years, in Thailand in particular. And in Thailand, because of the history and the culture, they believe very much in a strong leader. They like doing a pyramid here, by the way. The leader at the top, there's a leader, they have a king. So, well, he doesn't have much power, but he's sort of a figurehead, but he's very respected. He just died, actually, last month. The idea that there are people who are leaders and everyone else follows is very deeply embedded in the Thai culture. It's actually embedded in their language too, the way they speak and the way that they show respect and things like that. I also lived to do my master's degree in Tonga. I did a year in Tonga in the South Pacific. Anybody heard of Tonga? Near Fiji. Everybody heard of Fiji?
Yes.
South Pacific, palm trees, ocean, beach, very nice. I lived there for a year studying, for my master's degree in anthropology, we had to study another culture. And in Tonga, they actually have 3 different languages. They have one for the king, they also have a king, one for the royal family, one for the nobles, that's the next layer of society, and then one for the common people. It was hard enough to learn one language, but he had to learn 3 languages. I never learned the royal language, but Tongans, when they speak to the king, can't use regular Tongan. So you can imagine if you had Ukrainian, that was for everybody, then you had not just formal Ukrainian, but I'm talking about a whole other Ukrainian for noble people, and then another one for your king. Of course, you don't have a king, do you? But if you did, that's how it would be. So we don't have that, but we do have the idea that there are layers in society, and a culture that believes in hierarchy and hierarchical social structures will probably replicate that with the leadership in organizations. And it can be very hard to change. I can remember being a leader. I led a whole nonprofit in Thailand, and I was criticized for working with my team. When we meet, I ask them for their ideas. They were Thai. I wasn't. I was an outsider. I could see things that they couldn't see as insiders, but they could see things as insiders that I couldn't see because they were insiders. They knew the culture. And so I thought, let's put these two together and come up with better ideas. So I'd ask them, what do you think? What should we do? And somebody took me aside and said, don't ask that question. And I said, why not? They said, because you're the leader. You're supposed to know what we're supposed to do. They're looking for answers from you. I said, but I don't have all the answers. Yeah, but you have to act like you do, because you're the leader. And I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. I don't have all the answers. Yeah, well, you're supposed to pretend like you do. I said, wait a minute, they have good ideas that are better than mine, so why can't I use those? No, you're the leader. You're supposed to know. And if you don't know, then they lose respect for you. Well, that was the exact opposite of the way we do it in the United States, and so I was really, well, some organizations. And so I thought, well, how to do this? So what I did is I met with people individually, and I got their ideas. And then I pretended like they were mine, you see. So that's an old trick of leadership. So let's take a look at 3 problems of the human condition. And leadership addresses all 3 of these problems. So now we're getting back to sort of psychology and sociology a little bit, but it's very important. First is, how do we survive in this world? Big question, right? Not literally, well, that too, how we survive physically, literally, is important. But also, we're going to look at how do we make sense of the world and how to correctly use power. Because ultimately, leadership isn't just about power, it's about, we like to call it influence. But those 2 words have, in English, have a big difference, power and influence. Do they have, is there an equivalent in Russian?
No.
Between the 2?
Yeah.
Strong
Yes.
difference between the 2?
Yeah.
Because power implies you do it this way because I say so. Influence means you're trying to persuade people to do something. Now, you still have authority, but you want them to believe in it. So let's look at the first. How do we survive in this world? Well, leadership is very important here because of the challenges that we face. A leader helps to determine what are the best interests for individuals as well as for the group. If the leader is not clear on that, how can the group be clear? How can the organization be clear? They can't. And so by survival, I don't mean physical survival, although it can be, but how does an organization survive, like a business, or a university, or a hospital? You may say, well, they survive because the government supports them. But I meant, how do they really survive in terms of meeting the goals that they set out to achieve? Well, leadership can provide the key to the survival because it provides the vision and the clarity on how to get to achieve the goals that are set out. That's the survival of the organization. The second issue is, of course, the very important one, is how do you make sense of the world? Well, we all are trying to do that, aren't we? This crazy world we live in, and it is pretty crazy, let me tell you. I've traveled around, and everywhere I go, people, when they're honest, say, this is really a crazy place, this world we live in. So don't feel it's just Ukraine, okay? It's not. It's everywhere. You think, oh, this crazy country we live in, you know. And things are, you know, they can be crazy here in Ukraine. You know, you've had an interesting history. But you know what? Every country says that. You should hear the Serbians talk about their country and their culture. They said when I was there, I was in different parts of that region, the former Yugoslavia, and people said to me, well, you know, I was in Slovenia and other parts of the former Yugoslavia, and they said, so where are you going? And I said, well, I'm leaving for Serbia. And they said, oh, Serbia. They said, we're the Balkans, okay, and we're pretty, you know, we know we're different, but that's the crazy Balkans down there, you know. And I got there and found out it's true. But in any case, the question is, how do we make sense of the world? Well, we're not going to solve that today, sorry. But leaders can help in the process of making sense of the world that we live in. And our goals need to be clear. Our worldview needs to be clear. Our methods need to be clear. Once you start to get those pieces in place, then the culture of the organization becomes clear in the context of the social culture that we live in, the national culture. And leaders can provide a sense of security and a sense of clarity about the world. And by world, I'm not talking about the entire world. I'm talking about the world that you're working in, you know, like this university, let's say. So if a leader is clear on that, then the people who work for the leader can be clear. If the leader is not clear, then the followers, the workers, can wander, and they work in counter purpose. That's a term we use, meaning they work and pull in different directions. And that's always bad. Have you ever seen that in an organization?
Sometimes happen.
Yeah, it can happen in a family too, by the way. Family is an organization,
Yeah.
at least according to sociologists. You know.
Yeah.
I happen to believe that. Very interesting organization, but it's one we all know well, because hopefully all of us were raised in a family and weren't raised by wolves here. But I think the fact is that a leader can provide that sense and that can provide that clarity that people crave. People want that. They want that from their leaders, don't they? Because if they say to the leader, well, what do we do? I don't know. What do you mean? He or she doesn't know, you know. This doesn't look good. Or they act like they know, but they really don't. Have you ever worked for someone like that? I have. It makes you very nervous, actually, because you don't know if they know. And they change all the time. You know, one week we're going this direction, one week we're going that direction. People get confused. They become uncertain. They become very, very disillusioned. And ultimately, they usually leave. But to be a human means that we want to have sense in our world, don't we? We want to have meaning in our world. We want to have purpose in our world. And we don't always get those from leaders. You know, sometimes we have to get it from ourselves, you know, look inside of ourselves. But leaders can provide that too. And if leaders don't provide that, then the organization just drifts. We call it organizational drift. That's a term we actually use, meaning that there's no clarity. And everybody's rowing in the boat, but nobody knows the direction we're going, you know. Not good. So the third area is how to correctly use power, because power is a part of this whole issue of leadership. And how do you manage power? How do you find a right path that shows that the leader has direction, clarity, all the things I've talked about, and also uses their authority in a good way? Very, very important. But so they don't just sit around and say, I really don't know, what do you think? You know, like the ties, they didn't like that. But you need to have a leader that knows the goals, knows how to get there, knows what everybody's role is and how it all fits together, but at the same time is open to sharing the power. A lot of leaders believe that if they give away power, they become less. And what they don't realize, I'll let you in on a secret, and that is that the more power you give away as a leader, the more power you have, because you have power of influence. And you have a team that believes in what you're doing. And that's a very powerful thing. If everybody really believes and they've been lifted up, then that makes them more willing to work really hard. I've seen people that are willing to give and give and give because they've been given the respect and the dignity and the power. Not the authority necessarily to make, but their leader listens to their ideas, the leader shares in decision-making with them, the leader shows respect for their ideas, the leader, because everybody has something to offer, I believe, no matter who they are. They have some insight that the rest of the group doesn't have. You think that's true?
Yes, but sometimes they don't realize.
Exactly. And a leader, a good leader, draws that out of people. It draws out their potential, draws out their ideas, draws out something they didn't even know they had. I had my very first job, I worked for a man like that who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I was young and inexperienced, thought I had nothing to offer, and he showed me that I had something to offer, and he drew it out of me. I didn't know it was there, but he did. He saw it in me and gave me a chance. And he actually listened to it. He didn't always agree with it. Oh yeah, let's do it let's do it that way. No, he had a very balanced understanding, and he drew out. I watched him very carefully. I've tried to be a leader like him my whole life, to bring out in people the best in them and their ideas in a way that they don't even know they have. And they become confident. And you know what? Then they'll work for you very hard. Very hard. Because they're motivated. And motivation is something that a leader can give to the followers as well. So, how to correctly use power? 3 words. Give it away. You know? Give it away, right? Red hot chili peppers, right? Give it away, give it away. Never mind. That is something that's really important for leaders to understand. And most leaders don't want to give it away, right? They want to keep it. They want to hoard it. You know that word, hoard? And they don't realize that by doing that, everyone else says, well, I guess I don't have to work very hard. Let the leader do it, you know. He or she has all the ideas. I'm not going to. And people lose motivation very quickly. But if they're motivated and they're inspired, they become creative, they become energized, you've got a great team. And everybody is giving something. And everybody takes something. And everybody benefits with something. And that is leadership. So, remember, but back to the double nature, you know. It's hard to balance the selfishness and our good side and our bad side, you know. Okay, well, let's move on back to leadership and defining leadership. Now that we've talked about some aspects, let's take a look at another definition. And this talks about, there's actually 6 parts to this. It's one long sentence, sorry. But we're going to divide it into 6 parts, okay? The first part, leadership is the capacity. Okay, let's stop right there. Don't read the rest of it. Don't look. Leadership is the capacity. What does the word capacity mean?
like a power.
Right?
Like a power and how we
can use our opportunity.
Yes, yes, it's the ability is another word for capacity.
Yeah.
Right? The ability, the capacity. It's a very powerful word, at least in English. I don't know what the Russian word would be for capacity.
Well, ability would be the closest. Ability would be the
Ability,
closest.
what is that word?
Способность. Здібність.
Yeah.
Здібність.
So it's not just a skill, but it's the capacity, meaning you can do it, okay? It's the capacity, second part, to create and communicate vision. This cannot be emphasized too much. You know, the vision has to be clear. And by vision, I'm talking about, you know, more than just goals. We have to meet this goal and this goal. That's the management part. We're talking about leadership here is the vision. Why are we here in this organization? Not we here now, but I mean, why does this institution exist? Why are we here? What is our vision? A vision is much bigger than just goals for next week or the annual plan or the 5-year plan. Or it's the bigger picture of why we exist as an organization at all. You know, and everybody writes mission statements and all that. You probably have mission statements and everybody writes those, but it's even bigger than a mission statement. It's a vision. So, let's keep going. Leadership is the capacity, the ability to create and then communicate, because it's not enough to communicate if you can't create it. But if you just create it and then it sits in a drawer in an office, then you're not communicating. It must be communicated every day in different ways. Often it can be communicated without words. Actions. Leadership is the capacity to create and communicate vision, across, a third part, across a variety of organizational contexts. Very important. So it's at every level. Is it just the top that needs to have the vision? The leadership? The very top? Not enough, no. A lot of leaders think that. Well, I have the vision, but the rest of the people, they just need to be told what to do, and then, you know. But it's a very powerful thing when everyone understands the vision. I mean, right through the whole organization. Very powerful. And most important, it's very powerful if they not only know the vision, but they believe in the vision. You see how important? There's a big difference. Knowing it, believing it. Because you'll be motivated then. So leadership is capacity to create and communicate vision across a variety of organizational contexts that both, fourth part, that both serves and transforms followers. Whoa. Now think about it. This is a very powerful few words here. That both serves and transforms followers. Wait a minute. You're saying that the leadership, the purpose is to serve the follower. No. It's the other way around. The followers are supposed to serve the leader, right? That's what most people think. Here's a new idea. It's the core of our program, actually. It's called servant leadership, or transformational leadership, or whatever. There's lots of different theories, but it's the idea that the leader should be serving the followers. By serving, I don't mean making them tea or something. You can do that, but I'm talking about serving them, thinking of their well-being, thinking of their understanding, thinking of how to motivate them by serving them. That's a radical idea, isn't it? It's taking the idea of leadership and turning it upside down. We call it turning it on its head. That expression doesn't really mean anything, does it? Turning it on its head. Well, anyway. So, think about that for a minute. That's a radical idea. That's an extraordinary idea. It's a very powerful idea, and it's one that I've seen works in my own organization, where the leader is thinking less of him or herself and more about the followers and wanting to serve them and wanting them to be transformed. Transformed is a powerful word. It doesn't just mean to transform them in their understanding, their academic training or through workshops or whatever. We're talking about transforming at the heart, okay? We're talking about here, but we're also talking about here. And that is a powerful thing when people are transformed. What would be the translation of transformed? I mean, in a deep sense. Was there a Russian word that would
No, changed from within.
change from within?
Yeah.
Okay. It's even deeper though. In English, it's even deeper than change. It's transformed means that your whole being is different. Your thinking is different. Your attitudes are different. Your character is different, that we're going to talk about in a moment. Very, very, very strong word. So you're serving them? The leader is helping to transform the people that work? No. They're supposed to be told what to do, right? That'll teach them, right? No. What they're finding is that people who are just told what to do and treated like they're just pieces of machine, you know what? They'll work for you, sure. They'll work for you. They'll show up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, and leave at 5 o'clock, you know. And they'll do just enough to keep their job. Sound familiar? We see this all the time in America. I think it's probably true here in Ukraine too. Just enough to keep their job. But you won't get any new ideas from them. You won't get any extra work from them. You won't get any good feelings from them, positive feelings. You'll just get just enough. And an organization can't survive with just enough. An organization needs more than that. It needs creativity, it needs motivated people, it needs excited people, excited about the work they're doing. I'm not talking about, every day is, some great party or anything like that, but if you come into the work and you know that your leader wants the best for you and wants your ideas and wants to make you part of the team and wants to work with you, then that is a powerful thing. I've worked for people like that, and I would do anything for them. I worked for a man once that, I would probably go out and, do almost anything. I worked extra hours, because I was happy to do it. Because I knew that he believed in me and wanted the best for me. That's a powerful thing, and very rare, but it's becoming more common. And leadership studies are trying to show through empirical evidence, here we go, science, right? Through actual research is being done to show in our department, a lot of our doctoral students are doing their dissertations on authentic leadership or servant leadership or transformational leadership, and showing how it's correlated, statistically, to outcomes that are very positive in all different professions, because our students come from all different professions. And what we're finding is that there's a direct, statistically significant correlation between this kind of leadership and outcomes that are positive. How's that? That's empirical, that's scientific, that's not just somebody's idea that they've made up, So, research is very important, and that's what we're trying to do in our department. So, the followers are transformed, the followers are served, that's an idea. And the whole purpose of this is to embrace actionable change, because you have to keep, change is a part of organizational life. If you don't change, you begin to die. And certainly in business, you'll die economically. Your competitors will take away your work. But in ways, finally, this is the last part, that produce mutually desirable outcomes. So what does that mean, mutually desirable? It means everybody wins. We do have that expression, we have the expression win-win. That's a win-win. Do you have that expression in Russian? Yeah, that means everybody benefits. And a lot of people say, no, it's a dichotomy. Either I win, the leader thinks either I win, I get what I want, or the people who work for me win. In which case, I don't get what I want. How about, here's a new idea, how about we both get what we want? It can happen. I've seen it. In fact, we're trying to live it. We're trying to practice what we preach, that expression, in our own organization. When I was chair of the doctoral department, working with the faculty, trying to let them be leaders of their own work, and the students were benefiting, the staff were benefiting, the university was benefiting because of this idea. So we teach it, but we try to live it too. If you don't, you're a hypocrite. So there is one long definition of leadership that I think you see when you unpack it, when you get the components of it, it becomes a very powerful statement, I think. So there it is. It looks very simple, but it's not. It has a lot of different components, and we're going to talk more about some of the components here as we go on today. So it's complex, but it's also something that at its heart is somewhat simple, I think. And so it brings in elements of psychology, it brings in elements of sociology, it brings in elements of history, but most important, it brings in elements of anthropology, the most important discipline in the world. Does that sound sort of biased?
Yeah.
Probably does, okay. Okay, I admit it, I'm biased. I love anthropology, I love the study of culture. That's why we get along so well. We both are fascinated by culture and the fact that people think differently, live differently, act differently, assume different things, and it's fascinating to see our fellow human beings in their different worlds that they live in. So the study of leadership has to take all this into consideration. You have to look at the individual, the psychology. We talked about the dual nature of our humanity. You also have to look at the cultural context, remember the social context, but also have to look at organizational behavior. That's a psychology of the organization, how it changes. And because of that, if you have all that together, you have leadership. But before we talk about leadership some more, I think we need to make a distinction between, well, I'll let...
Yeah. Well, we'll switch gears a little bit here right now. Having gotten my degree in the West, also studying leadership, and when I came back here, and it was very difficult for me to communicate to people what, in fact, I studied in the United States. So when I say leadership, not many people understood the concept. Well, we know about political leadership, we know about leadership in sports, but we don't really know about leadership in business. The science that is well known here and that is well taught here is management. And when I started exploring what is done about leadership here in Ukraine, I realized that leadership is taught as part of a management course. So in essence, the way it is presented here, that's the paradigm, that's the way of thinking how people perceive leadership in business. If it is part of business setting, then leadership is part of management. So management is a much bigger arena, and leadership is just part of management. So is this a correct assumption? I mean, that's the question.
Maybe leadership can be bigger than management.
Well, that's a correct answer. But you know, of course, when a professor asks a question, it means that there is a trick to that. So you figured out the science of answering right to the questions like this. Indeed, if we consider the concept of leadership, we can actually trace it back to Aristotle, right? His ethos, pathos, and logos. You know, ability, moral reasoning, ethos, pathos, appealing to feelings of people, and logos, ability to reason with people. I mean, this goes back way back in history. So leadership was very, very important. And management appeared on the scene when the industrial age came around, right? When there were a lot of factories, plants, and all of a sudden you had to manage crowds of people and make sure that these organizations run smoothly, right? So that's when the science of management came on the scene. So basically it was in the beginning of the 20th century. And the guy who introduced it was Fayol in 1916, and basically the basic premise of management was to organize the enterprise so that it would run efficiently, okay? So in essence, we can actually separate management and leadership or contrast, not separate, but contrast management and leadership using these identifiers. So management is more about planning and budgeting, about organizing and staffing and controlling, while leadership is more about establishing their direction, aligning people, and motivating people. So if you consider an organization, each organization answers 3 questions basically. What, how, and why. I mean, it's a very, very basic thing. So basically, what do we do, how we do it, and why we do it. So if we look at management, management answers the question, 2 questions, what and how. And leadership answers the question, why. Now, when I teach organizational behavior, the thing that I say to the students usually is that outstanding organizations, you know, the exemplary organizations, are the ones that are driven by why question. So basically, everything that they do flows out of the why question. And then it goes into how and what. The mediocre, you know, run-of-the-mill, so to speak, organizations, they go from what to how and then to maybe why.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe why. So leadership answers this question why. And if you consider this, you will understand that the why question actually helps to align people. Because if a person understands why this organization functions, why it is in existence, what needs it is meeting in the community, and if a person shares these same values, that person will work hard for that organization. So why aligns people? Why also motivates people? Because it is not enough, I mean, in different economies, things function differently, right? So here in our economy, getting paid is already very motivational, right? If I get paid, that's motivation in and of itself. But let me suggest to you that this is not enough of a motivation for a successful organization. You really have to work on why, on that vision that Dr. Johnson was speaking about. So, and that is the task of leadership. So, also you may think about it in terms of power. Dr. Johnson was speaking about power. I don't know if you studied power taxonomy, personal power, and positional power. So we can, you know, in essence, split power into 2 parts. Personal power, and there are, we can say that it's referent power and expert power. So basically, you have a power if you have an expertise in the field. People will be coming to you for advice. People will be listening to you. People will be following you. That is expert power. Now, the referent power is that it means that your character is so appealing to people that they want to identify with you because there is something good about you that they want to be part of. So that is personal power. Now there is positional power, and that is basically I'm your boss and you do what I tell you to do. Okay? So I was assigned, so somebody said, okay, he's the boss, you're the subordinate, so you listen to him and obey him. And in the positional power, we have legitimate power, so basically, again, by law, you know, I'm your leader. There is coercive power, so basically, I have the leverage, basically. I can punish you, I can, dock your pay, or I can fire you, or I can do something else. And there is a reward power. I can give you premium, I can give you bonuses, I can give you, so you basically, as I call it, manipulate people into working in your organization, in a way. Okay? So, I want to be careful here, because I don't want to bang down on management. Management is important, very important. And yet I would say that managers function more out of the positional power. And good leaders, and I want to emphasize the word good leaders, they function out of personal power, because they have the answer to the question why, and they know how to do it. So they have expertise, and they have the passion, they have the vision. So that is the major difference here, okay? Now let's see what's next. So ultimately, if we consider this paradigm, I would suggest that this is wrong, as we established, and leadership is much bigger field, and maybe you have a question, should leaders be managers? And I would say, yeah, I mean, as a leader, I function as a manager as well. But for my organization to move forward, I need to make sure I'm a leader first, and the manager second, okay? And in small organizations, if we're talking about small organizations, usually leaders and managers are the same person, You have to be. You don't have enough staff to delegate and do things. But the bigger organization gets, the more structure there is, the more of a leader you can be, and the more managers you can have around yourself, helping you to achieve the why, the answer to the why question. Okay? So that is very important in terms of leadership and management. So I like this phrase, and in America this phrase is well known. Everybody uses it all the time. I don't know if you have heard it, but I like it. So managers do things right, while leaders do the right thing. So just interact with me a little bit. So what do you think it means?
Maybe leaders have right goals, and if they have right goals, they do right things, and managers have goals that somebody head of manager give goals, and managers just do things, but do it well.
Okay, thank you.
Here in the academy we are taught to be managers, so we have to make the decision between two alternatives, but not everyone is a leader, so we have to develop these skills and to inspire others to take the right path.
Good, I like it. Anybody else? Okay, so basically what this statement implies is that leaders, they have to have moral character. You know, they have to have good virtues, and we'll be talking about that as well. So, because if you think about it, when you ask a question, what is effective leadership? I mean, if you ask just anyone, so what is effective leadership? Who is an effective leader? I'll ask you. Oh, don't be afraid. There is no wrong answer.
An example. Example for other people. How he does his work. How he imagine this organization. He's an example.
Good. Excellent answer, actually, and a good answer, because it actually resonates with where I want to lead you. But let me suggest to you that usually, when you answer this question, the answer is a good, effective leader is the one who achieves the results. So basically, if your organization, gets revenue, if you are in the black, if you don't go bankrupt, if it just exists and it's well off, I mean, that leader is considered to be good. Okay, so effective. So effective leader, in essence, in our societies, both in Ukraine and in the United States, is considered to be a person who can get things done. However, the problem with this statement is very subtle, and yet very significant. How does the leader achieve these results? You see, the ethics and moral and character part of leadership is divorced from the understanding of effective leadership. Basically, okay, well, as long as you get things done, I don't care how you get them done. And yet, there is a huge problem with this. Because, I mean, in the West there is this question called a Hitler problem. Was Hitler an effective leader?
Yes.
I mean, did he get things done? I mean, I guess he did. I mean, he achieved a lot of things that he wanted to achieve. But was he a good leader? And I'm sure all of us will say, of course not. So what is the problem? The problem lies not in the fact whether you can achieve or not achieve things. The problem is in the main dimension of your character. You know, how do you do it and why do you do it? Okay? So that is a very important trait of a leader, and that's why we're talking about character in leadership today. Because leadership without character is a very, very dangerous thing. Because a very skilled, very charismatic person without character will destroy a lot of things. And I guess Dr. Johnson stole my thunder here a little bit because he already spoke about it.
Sorry.
But let's think about this question. In light of everything that I have said, just think about it. Where does the practice of effective leadership begin? What is the starting point of effective leadership?
To my point of view, from our childhood.
Okay, okay, okay. And could you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
Because we form our character and we will plan maybe how we'll make some things in the future.
Okay, okay. So character is an important part of this.
Yeah.
Again, beginning of leadership is character, right? So the answer that we're giving here is leading well begins with leading oneself. And leading oneself begins with assessing one's own character. So we need to know who we are before we can lead others. And we need to know to make sure that who we are is not damaging to community, to society. So we need to be very honest with ourselves when we're assessing our own selves. And only then we can start thinking about leading others. And that is a very, very important first step. So with this, I would like to pass the baton to Dr. Johnson, and he'll continue with you.
Thank you. Sorry I stole your thunder.
That's okay.
I try not to. So the question before us is, as was said, it's very, very important that you don't just look at this as some tools, like a toolbox. You open up and I have a tool for this and a tool for that. That's efficiency, but we're talking about effectiveness that goes beyond that. And ask the question, what is character then? If we're talking about character and leadership, and we were given a wonderful example from history, there's many leaders who are like that are very effective, but they're not very moral. And it's our belief that you have to have moral leadership, because the ultimate goal that you're reaching is not just to get things done, but to do them in the right way and to do the right things. So, what is character? Well, we don't have time to spend, talking about the psychology of morality and character from that perspective, but we'll just quickly go through it. Ask two questions. What is character? Who am I? Who am I? And what do I believe? And a very famous author, Bass, said the character of a leader involves his or her ethical and moral beliefs, intentions and behaviors. Not just behaviors, but intentions, and not just intentions and behaviors, but also beliefs. We are our character. So let's think about this for a moment. You may say, well, that's obvious, but think about it for a minute. If your character is deficient in some way, can you be a good leader? If you're unethical, if you're dishonest, if you betray people, if you use people just to serve yourself, these are things that we see, don't we? I mean, we don't need to go into this in detail now, but when we look around the world, we're not just talking about political leadership here, by the way. We're talking about leadership in the medical field, leadership in the business field, leadership in higher education field, leadership in the nonprofit or public administration. It's really important to understand that this is in every level, in every kind of organization, small or large. Because the character of the leader often filters down through the organization. We have an expression in the United States that we say, if you want to ruin an organization, poison the head. In other words, like the pyramid, you just poison the top, and pretty soon the poison works its way through the whole organization. So we need to look at our own character, and this is not very comfortable for a lot of people. They don't want to look inside themselves. Why? Because it's difficult to ask this question of ourselves. But it's necessary. If you're going to be a leader, you really have to. And we believe that, in general, that the literature is showing and the research is showing a very interesting thing, and that is that there's a concept that's sort of an old concept that's coming back now. It's called virtues. This is something, of course, that the Greeks were very, very big on, and it used to be a part of the common curriculum, actually, in the United States over 100 years ago. They taught the virtues, and the virtues were well known. So let's take, but now they're coming back, and a lot of people are saying that the virtue, as derived from the Greek concept, is very, very important for us to understand. So it means, arete means possessing the life skills we need to achieve our highest human potential, and moral virtues are the life-giving patterns of behavior. Moral virtues are the life-giving patterns of behavior. Well, that's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it? That it gives life to things, and virtues are extremely important because they go beyond the individual to the whole organization. And virtue is the most ancient and durable concept in the history of ethical theory, and yet it's been ignored a lot when it comes to leadership. And in fact, it sounds, in English, it sounds a little old-fashioned to say, well, it's a virtue, he's a virtuous leader, or she's a virtuous leader. Sounds a little old-fashioned, but in fact, it really is the core of what we're talking about here. And so we need to ask ourselves about where do virtues come from, and how character influences leadership is our topic here. So how does one character shape their leadership? Let me just ask you that question. Any thoughts? How does one's character shape their leadership?
Influence, what you told.
Influence.
Because it's coming influence from inside to the leader, and it's like this connection.
Right.
Really like this, like synergetic effect coming.
Yes. Yes.
Mostly because what we mentioned, charisma, somehow, and influence which coming from the team to the leader and leader to the team.
Mhm.
I think it's
So it's dynamic. Yeah.
It's dynamics, which is inside.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're saying here is that a leader's character isn't just in isolation from, and in fact, we use the expression, I used it a little while ago, but I'll say it again because I like it so much, and that is that you lead from who you are. A lot of people say, no, I show up at the office and I just do my job. Then I go home and then I'm really me. No. Who you are comes through no matter what context you're in. Trust me. It really does come through. And your character will come through. And it will be evident to those around you, even if you don't think it is. It's very evident. And so here are some of the virtues, back to that again, that are very, very important. One is the whole issue of self-control and self-discipline. A leader must have that. You ever work for a leader that doesn't have that? Has no self-control? They explode in anger, or they make quick decisions that are not good ones. Self-discipline is the ability to regulate your own emotions. It's often called emotional intelligence, you might have heard of. The character that maintains independence and selflessness, not selfishness, but selflessness, meaning that you think of others. Remember, serving others instead of just serving yourself. And finally, focuses on the common good and resists self-interest. A leader, particularly those with positional power, can get a lot of benefits from that. They get a lot of prestige, they get a lot of, we call them perks. They get all sorts of, their own office and a secretary and all this, and they can have a lot of things that can reinforce the idea that they're important and everybody else is not. Well, that is not what we're talking about. We want the leadership to focus on the common good, what is best for others and for the organization. This is a radical idea. I mean, people say, oh, it can never work. But what's interesting now in leadership studies is that the research is showing that it does work, that actually organizations are more effective if leaders are like this, that they have good character. That's an interesting idea, that the science is showing that this is actually a better way to lead. Think about it. So, character influences leadership in 3 key areas: culture, worldview, and critical thinking. We'd like to talk about each of those now, briefly. We've got to watch the clock. So I'll give it over to Dr. Artyom.
We actually have to fight over this part with the Dr. Johnson because he and I both like worldview, culture discussion. But simply, I mean, there are many influences on our character, but we wanted to highlight the main ones. And we've spoken, Dr. Johnson has spoken a lot about culture today, and maybe you already understand why culture has such an influence on us. In science, in social science, there is this thing called social construction of reality. In fact, yesterday at dinner we were discussing the fact that the concept of love is socially constructed. I mean, it was a very fascinating talk. We won't go into that, but love in Pakistan is very different than concept of love here or in the West. It is just a very, very fascinating thing. So what we consider to be very controlling, very bad, like prearranged marriages, for them it's very prudent and it's right, and it gives them freedom to enjoy life because they know their parents will take care of them. So this is already part of who they are. This is already part of their character. And this character will drive their behavior, will drive the dynamic of their interactions with other people around. So culture plays a very, very important role in shaping us in who we are. Basically, through socialization, when we, first, socialize through our parents, with our parents, then our peers, then our teachers, then just friends, etc., etc., etc. All of these influences, they tell us what's right, what's wrong, who we are, how we need to act, etc. They tell us maybe, oh, the world is not fair, so I will stand on my own. I will fight for the place under the sun, as we say here, right, in Ukraine. I have to get it. So I don't care if others suffer, but I need to live happily ever after, etc., etc. So our culture, the mentality of our culture does define us as leaders and does define us as moral beings. Because, again, morality, and I'm not a relativist in that regard, and yet in different cultures, morality is different, and thus character is different. What is considered to be rude in the United States is okay here. Like, for instance, when I was in the United States, I remember my first experience when I was standing in a line in a store, and there was only one person at the cashier, and I came and stood right behind that person, like this. And I was told, no, the line is over there, 5 meters away, so you stand there. Or Americans who live here, they can, maybe Jeff can speak to that, they say, when I stand in line, I can't understand why people get in front of me all the time. And I'm saying, well, because you don't stand close enough. There shouldn't be enough room for a person to squeeze in between you and for them it's rude. When they come here, it is rude. It's violation of their right for a place in line and for their privacy. This bubble, as we speak, personal space. Yes, personal space is very important. Like, personal space is very different in different cultures, and it is also part of character. It is also who we are. So it's very important. So I'm fascinated by the fact how culture has this reciprocal thing. First, we as human beings create culture, and then culture creates us as human beings. So once we get into that circle, it's that's it. We're just defined by it. That's why it's so fascinating to learn other cultures, because all of a sudden you see the world from a very different perspective. You start understanding things from a totally different perspective. But that is a totally different conversation. Our character is shaped by our culture, and we can't really help it. Second thing is our worldview. Worldview is a big concept, basically. It answers the presuppositional things about life. So who we are, where we came from, why things around us are so bad, and what should we do about all of this. So answers to these questions, these are worldview questions, answers to these questions define our character as well. You see, because if we believe that we're just animals, for instance, and it's survival of the fittest, that is going to be one set of characteristics. It'll be one type of character that we develop, fighting character. You know, if we believe that, I don't know, there is a supreme being and we are creatures created by someone and there are some laws that govern this universe, then we act in different way, right? So, that all the worldview, and I brought these glasses. You know, basically the world and culture. So colors are world. So basically the worldview tell, oh, everything's pink or everything's green, or yet the reality of things are very different from what we perceive them to be, what we consider them to be. So when we think that something is right, it may not be right. When we think that something is wrong, it may not be totally wrong in another culture, for instance. So again, worldview, and depending on the worldview, again, if I hold one worldview, I will consider certain things wrong, which are considered to be right by a person who has another worldview. Okay? I hope I'm not confusing. So far, so good? Okay, so culture and worldview are external. Well, culture is externally influenced. Worldview is somewhat internal influence because we develop it as we grow. Because we develop these answers to these questions and we become who we are because of our ability to think and reason. And that's why the third component is so important. Critical thinking is very important in determining our character as well. Because if we're not critical thinkers, we'll just go with the flow. We'll just do whatever we're told, right? And on one hand, we will not be true leaders or even managers for that matter, because we will not have a say, we will not have a core, and then we won't be able to develop into anything better. So critical thinking allows us to challenge our assumptions. So these words are very important here. So we need to be open-minded, meaning that we need to welcome other opinions and consider other opinions and see if they're valid or not. We need to be honest with ourselves. When we see that certain beliefs that we have are wrong, we need to say they're wrong. We shouldn't justify them. We should change them. So I would add courage here. Courage to change things, courage to change your assumptions. We need to be self-aware. In order to assess ourselves, we need to be, as I was speaking before, we need to truly understand who we are. Otherwise, we won't have a frame of reference. We won't be able to really critically assess ourselves. Well, we need to be rational beings. So we really shouldn't be driven by emotions. Well, today I feel like this. Tomorrow I feel like this. So the truth depends on my emotional state. This is wrong. I mean, we really need to apply our ability to reason to develop arguments and assess and judge the world around us. And it is a discipline. Critical thinking is a discipline where we really have to train ourselves in. So these three factors, culture, which is very important in shaping us, worldview, which is both imposed on us as we grow, but also is developed by us as we start reasoning, and critical thinking, which is totally under our control, where we can engage with the world around us and really come to our own conclusions. So these three factors are very important in shaping us as a moral being, in shaping our character, and thus shaping us as leaders. And outcomes of leadership. So now we're moving into, now we have an effective leader. Now we have a moral leader. So what should it lead to? What should we really see as a result of this type of leadership?
Thank you. Okay, we're almost finished.
Almost done, yeah.
There's drinking from the fire hose here. You ever heard, do you have that expression here? Drinking from the fire hose? Means getting a lot of information. We've covered a lot today, haven't we? And I really appreciate your attention, because I think this is really important for us to understand how all this fits together. And so now we've walked through the idea of leadership. We've talked about the elements of leadership. We've talked about the background to leadership. We've talked about the character of the leader. We talked about the virtues that leaders express, and of course, just what we just covered about the areas that impact who we are. That we don't just make up who we are, wake up one day and say, I think I'll be this way or that way. We're influenced more than we realize by our culture, because it's all around us, and it makes us who we are, and our worldview, and the critical thinking that we just covered. So let's talk finally about the outcomes. So where does all this lead? You know, it's the greatest fear of academics is the two-word question, so what? What does all this mean? So what? Well, there are definite outcomes, and this is what we want to talk about just for a moment here as we conclude. We believe that there are three major outcomes that come from this kind of good leadership, positive leadership, authentic leadership, transformational leadership, servant leadership, that makes a difference in organizations and indeed in individuals. So a driving force in all this is self-awareness, and that is really, in essence, what wisdom is. Wisdom often is used, at least in English, as referring to knowledge. A person is wise because they have a lot of knowledge. You know, they've read a lot of books. They have a lot of degrees, a lot of academic credentials. But we're not talking about that kind of knowledge. We're talking about wisdom, which is a deep understanding of things in society and indeed in the world, but also a self-awareness. If you're a wise person, you know something about yourself. One of the greatest, the research shows very clearly that one of the biggest problems in research, or leaders, the biggest problem in organizations in leadership is that we have leaders who are not self-aware. So they act out of impulses that they themselves don't understand. And they treat others in ways that they don't understand. And they have an impact on others negatively that they don't understand. They're, what we say in America, clueless. If you know that word, it means they don't have a clue. The lack of self-awareness is absolutely one of the largest problems in leadership studies. And a leader who is wise, on the other hand, understands that they not only need to know themselves, know thyself, that old saying, but they can know themselves. We now have the privilege of our culture now, living in this world now, is that we have access, through the internet and through many other means, to information about how to become self-aware, how to understand what motivates you, not just the psychology, but the sociology of that, to understand your culture and how it's impacted you. One of the greatest things that you could ever, if you ever have a chance to live outside Ukraine, please take it. Doesn't matter what it is, take it. Why? Because you will come back a changed person, because you'll never see your society in the same way again. You'll see it through different eyes, and that's good. I'm an anthropologist, I think it's good. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt. It changes you in a way that you cannot even begin to describe. And I think makes you a better person, because you realize that the way of life that you live, not to be critical at all, it's just one way of many to live. And to see how other people live and the assumptions they make and their worldview is very, very, very illuminating. So, a wise leader understands that they have to have self-knowledge. Another outcome is followership. That means that people will want to follow you, not because they have to, because of the positional power, but because they want to, because there's something in you that they respect, and there's something in you that they want to also possess, which is wisdom. But also, it's not just technical ability, it can be that, but there's something more. Good leadership is something more than just technical ability or understanding of the profession. It's much more than that. It's an awareness of the self, an awareness of the organization, and indeed the culture as well. And that goes way beyond just head knowledge, as we call it, into a deeper understanding. And followers will be able to, and be eager actually, to participate if all the things that we've been talking about take place, if they feel a part of the vision, for example, if they're communicated to, if they're respected, and they're treated as an equal in the whole enterprise. Not that they're running things, but you have to have leaders that have authority and who manage as well. But it's very important to have an understanding that followers are really the most important part of an organization. Everybody thinks it's the leaders that are the most important, and they are, but the followers also make up the organization and make it happen. And that leads us to our final point of stewardship. In English, the word stewardship is often used just in a financial sense. You know, you're a steward, you have stewardship of resources, financial resources. You're responsible as a leader for a budget. That's how, it's a word that's not used much in English anymore, at least in the United States, but it's more than that. Stewardship means that you're taking on a responsibility for something. And that can be the responsibility to leave organizations in better shape than you found them. This, I think, is an important thing. Stewardship of time, stewardship of resources, stewardship of human resources. I don't mean just in HR sense. I mean in a sense that you are responsible for your people and for their well-being. Remember the serving the follower. This is a hugely new idea, but I think one that has been shown to be very, very, very important and very effective, actually. So finally, just want to say about another outcome and ask the question, how does character practically apply to the way a leader leads his or her organization? Now that you've had this lecture, you're all experts in leadership, so what do you think? How does character of the leader, the individual character, practically apply? Now we're talking, you know, it's all been theory before, now we're talking practicality to the way a leader leads his or her organization. Any thoughts on that? Anybody has? Any ideas that come to you about this very important question? It's really, in many ways, the core question of our presentation.
Maybe if someone do something by himself, he can do it for something for organization.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts on this? It's really a critical question, isn't it? Because we can talk about it all day, but what is the outcome? How do you do this? And again, it can be learned. Well, here are a couple of suggestions, just really quickly. And that is that character of a leader who is really a virtuous leader, is a moral leader, places the interest of the group or organization over the interest of the leader. We've talked about that, right? So we can move on. The leader contributes to ethical behaviors and models ethical behaviors, not just talks about it, but actually lives it out. We call it walking the talk. That's an expression we use. That means you can talk about it all you want, but do you live it? Do you walk it? Do you actually embody this ethical behavior? Therefore, this can lead to reduced corruption. Why? Because the leader is thinking of the organization and the followers and not just themselves. Now that may sound, you might be thinking, well, that's very idealistic. You know, human nature being what it is, people are going to always try to get more for themselves. Maybe, but sometimes being a virtuous leader can be a reward in itself that has more benefits than acting in an unethical way. You know, the benefits of bossing people around is only fun for a short time, you know. The real joy comes from building a team and having people who are happy and enthused and motivated. That is much better than the benefits you can get from acting unethically, I can tell you that. Not that I was unethical, but, you know. So we can have facilitation of organizational change processes. That's a whole course that we teach on organizational change, so we won't go into that in detail, but it is absolutely critical because organizations are changing all the time. And most organizations just drift and let the change just happen. But in our view, it needs to be directed, it needs to be ethical, and it needs to be moral. And finally, this will produce benefits to the whole organization and indeed to society, which is where we want to end up. This is a benefit not just to the organization, not just to the leader, not just to the follower, but to the entire society of which this organization is a part. How's that for an outcome? I think that we'll conclude there, and
Yep. So,
oh, there you go.
basically, this is the official ending of the presentation. I just wanted to briefly, we will have a question and answer time just in a moment. I just wanted to make a few more comments here, tell you a little bit about who we are, and so who I represent. Basically, this presentation was made possible because Academy invited us, but we are the Analytical Center for Leadership Research and Development, an organization that my American colleagues and I started here in Kiev, Ukraine. So, and I will read you we talked about vision.
Yeah, there it is.
So, the vision statement you can follow. The vision of the Analytical Center for Leadership Research and Development is to keenly understand the practice of leadership in Eastern Europe through scholarly research, to train and develop leaders across various sectors of society through education, and to influence public policy in advocating for the role that virtues and values play in leading effectively for the benefit of the great general public at large. So this is who we are. Unfortunately, the website got cut off there, but you will see the website. I will put my business cards here on this table if you want to pick them up to later contact me. But basically, we hope that this partnership will continue, and maybe we'll come here with a series of lectures on different topics of leadership. We can do it in English or in Ukrainian. So basically, again, we are here to serve you. We're here to do some leadership education and training, also leadership research, and ultimately we do want to change or affect public policy in this country. So this is who we are. Now, as we spoke about leadership, unfortunately we can't really bring and buy books for everyone, but I will leave 3 books for the library here. This is in English. James Kouzes and Barry Posner are, seminal thinkers in leadership. They have studied leadership for 30 years, and this is one particular book. It's a very basic and yet very profound. It's called The Truth About Leadership, and they speak about 10 truths that they have discovered or they believe to be true across time and across societies. So it is in English, and I believe this book speaks to the issues that we spoke about character, about values, about who leader truly is. So I will leave it here, and I guess you can check it out from the library or whatever system you use here. So with this, I would like to open our session to questions and answers. If you have any questions, we hope we have some answers. So please, Dr. Johnson and I, we're here to answer any of your questions about leadership. Yes, please.
First of all, I would like to express my thank you to both of you. Your lecture inspired me in a great way, especially I like the statement, and it proved my own opinion, that everyone can become a leader, and you should only train and develop these skills in yourself. And my question will be the following. What recommendations could you give to a young leader who is going to take his first leadership position? Because very soon we are going to graduate from the academy, and some of us will become bosses, leaders. So what are your recommendations for us?
I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay, we'll do it together.
Oh, we'll do it together, yes.
Because you have the insider understanding, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think the very first thing is that what you just said is so important, to believe in yourself that you can be a leader, that you can develop as a leader, and that you can improve as a leader. And so you have to develop a mindset of constant improvement, that you're never going to reach perfection, but you can always get better and better. And to have a goal then to always be learning something more about leadership. And the good news is that right now is a wonderful time to be a leader, because there's so much being printed now and researched out there about what makes for good leaders. Even 20 years ago, this was not available. Even 15 years ago, this was not available. Now it's coming out. So books like this, you should make an attempt to, and on the internet, there's thousands and thousands of good articles and things like that, to keep improving and challenging yourself to become a better leader. It's something that can be done now with the resources that are available to all of us. And so there's really no excuse for not wanting to develop your understanding and then put it into action. It's not just enough to have it up here in your head, but then to actually implement it and try to bring about positive change in the organization you're in. And of course, each organization will be different, Some will be receptive to this, to new ideas about leadership, some will not be. I'm going to be honest with you. You know, there's a fair amount of resistance because older leadership wants to keep things the way they have it now. And the change, though, that I believe is coming is going to be worldwide, and we can become a part of that, and you should be a part of that too.
Well, I guess I will add just to say, by saying that leaders are lifelong learners. So when you graduate, don't think you made it. I mean, it's like, that's it, I stop here. I just, you know, who I am, and that's it. Constantly learning. After getting your degree, continue educating yourself, continue developing yourself. In terms of very practical advice, I guess there is, what I have observed at times is that a young and capable leader comes into an organization and knows that, and thinks he or she knows that, okay, I'm going to change it, and starts changing things. It is both good and bad. I mean, it's good that there is a drive for change, but I would suggest that whenever you enter an organization as a leader, first spend some time learning. Remember we spoke about culture. Organizations also have culture. And when you come into the organization, you don't know their culture. You don't really know how they function, what makes them tick, what makes them motivated. First, become a learner, become a student of your organization. So learn how it functions, what it does, how it does it, and why it does it. And only then, after you know organization, only then you need to start developing the change. And then, after you develop the concept of change, developing the concept of change, and then start implementing change. That is very important. Don't just jump in and say, okay, I have the answers. That'll be not very well perceived, and it may not be the best direction for the organization.
And then, of course, the most important thing of all is to study anthropology.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
I haven't any questions, but I want to say thank you both of you for your lecture. It were understandable and everything is clear. And I hope all of us make our knowledge more deeper than it were previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
May I ask a question to the crowd?
To the crowd?
Yes, to the students.
Okay.
I'm a physician from America and a colleague and friend of these men. I've lived here in your country for 9-10 years. And as I live out some of these ideas that they're speaking and try to bring Western ideas to your country, I work primarily with physicians. And the question I often ask is, do you want change? Everybody wants to change the medical system in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But then I ask, how can you bring about this change? And they all say, oh, the system cannot be changed. With what you've heard today, how would you answer me? How does a physician who's 25, 30 years old change the Ukrainian medical system today?
That's a big question.
It should be changed to minimize corruption, to bring value to patients, to create a more integrated model to the Western and international world. I think we would all agree with those ideas. But how does it change?
First time we must change our minds.
But it's better to be healthy.
Personal responsibility,
Yeah.
personal agreement with the idea that the character of the leader must matter. Your vision will influence others. And this is what I'm trying to communicate to your country as well. So I'm encouraged being here, hearing this, and seeing your response. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I add to that? I think change is, you know, especially for young people, they want it right away. And I think as the older you get, you realize that change takes a long time. And so how do you bring about change? How do you make something happen? One of the professors who started our program used to always say, how do you eat an elephant? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. There's the answer. So, small pieces, small change. Look for small changes that you can make. Because you're not going to walk in and first day and change the whole organization. Everybody goes, oh, thank you for that wonderful idea. We never thought of that. Let's change everything, you know, because you say so. No, you have to be realistic. You have to start small, one bite at a time, and try to make changes at the place where you are, and then hopefully that will have a multiplying effect as people see the positive influence.
Okay. Anybody else?
Maybe you can advise some books like this, and
Which are similar to your lecture.
yeah.
Well, in our lecture we covered a lot of ground. We gave a little bit from different areas. In terms of leadership theory, the basic book is Northouse.
Yeah, Peter Nordhaus.
Peter Northouse. Well, I can type it somewhere.
Yeah.
Or maybe, yeah.
Okay.
Nordhaus, yeah.
So it's leadership theory and practice. The book is titled Leadership.
Sort of a classic work, and it covers all different theories of leadership in a very simple and very understandable way. Peter is his first name. And you should be able to find this on the internet as well.
Yeah, in terms of culture, it is Hofstede. What is it? Cultural.
Just look up Gert Hofstede.
Yeah, and Hofstede has a lot of information online.
Some pronounce it Hofstede. He's Dutch. I don't speak Dutch, so I think it's Hofstede, but Hofstede. H-O-F, sorry, S-T-E-D-E. And just look that up as well.
So he has done cultural studies. So basically, he's the one who talks about cultural dimensions, how to compare cultures, what is appreciated and what is valued in different cultures. Actually, if you are interested in, thank you, if you're interested in much more in-depth study of culture, leadership in different cultures, so there is a study called the Globe Study. The Globe Study, House et al.
Yeah.
There are many authors to
Just
it.
look up Globe Study.
Yeah,
With
but-
all caps, G-L-O-B-E. Globe
So
Study.
the first author is listed usually House, right?
Yeah.
House et al.
Yeah,
And Globe. And so basically, it's an acronym. Do you remember what it is?
No.
It is about leadership, basically about effective leadership in different countries of the world. They studied 62 societies, and I mean the book is this thick, basically. I mean it's this tall and this thick, but it's a fascinating reference book. I wouldn't say that it's a fascinating read, but a reference book is a very good book.
It's about culture, though. Not so much about leadership, but it's about culture and the different values that people have. They're called value dimensions, and it's very fascinating to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many other resources, you know.
Yeah.
to-
Well, Kouzes and Posner. If you find any books by Kouzes and Posner,
Yeah.
they are good. They're very good.
Mhm. They have a model of leadership that has 5 aspects that are very interesting. They've sort of boiled down leadership theories and philosophies and ideas to 5 major dimensions that they think are the dimensions of leadership. And then they've actually developed the instrument to measure those. I myself, my first research that I did in Ukraine was using the LPI, the Leadership Practices Inventory that they developed, and I looked at leadership here in the Ukraine. And I could, but I can't, if I start, I won't be able to stop to tell you about that, so.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Really, today it was really fascinating lecture. It was very interesting, easy, in very simple way describes the character of the leader itself, and pretty nice kind of starting discussion. I think our students will agree with me, and this like somehow. In some cases, introduction, in some cases, just giving us more ideas, points of view, maybe something which were in our minds before, and make it wider. So we were thankful, and we hope to see you again.
Yep.
Thank you.